Welcome to Super Context, a podcast autopsy of media.
How we consume it and how it informs our everyday culture.
I'm Christian Sager, a writer and a designer.
And I'm Charlie Bennett, a librarian and a radio raconteur.
Each episode is us trying to understand the entertainment world that we all live in.
Just a little bit better. Today's episode is about the World Inferno Friendship Society's record, Addicted to Bad Ideas, Peter Lorre's 20th Century. This 2007 concept album, inspired by screen actor Peter Lorre, is just one piece of the larger performative project that was the life of Jack Terricloth. We talk about the band, the album, the lifestyle, and the limits of the World Inferno Friendship Society's punk cabaret spectacle.
You can find show notes for this episode on Patreon at patreon.com/supercontext. Or you can write us an email at supercontextpodcast@gmail.com. What parasocial rituals do you have? Do they make you feel more connected to the world?
How dare you?
Or do the ghosts of their values haunt you?
All right, Chris, what's been fun about a lot of our music episodes is, one, when we both enjoy it a lot, or two, when one of us does not understand why the hell someone likes what they like.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, one of the episodes that we had to vault, that we had to get rid of, was a Soundgarden episode.
Right.
Because it turned into stop criticizing my identity, dude. And that was me saying it. Because you liked the record, but you were like, I don't adore this. I don't want to be these people, and I don't think they're gods. I have, as I think you have, really relaxed on the whole, my taste in music is a part of my essential worth as a human being. So there's just been a little less of that prickliness. But I was headed towards this episode with the idea that we were going to talk about a record I'd never heard before. And so I listened to it and I was like, oh, I like that. That's good. This will be quote unquote easy. I will talk about what's new to me and what's old to Chris. And, you know, we'll kind of bring out what happened on this record and why it's interesting. Then I started doing the research, or then I started looking at research you brought up and doing my own research. And I discovered, oh, this is not about the record. This is about a person, a persona. This is about Jack Terricloth. And we're just going to use the record as an excuse to talk about him. Okay. I'm still not. Okay. We're just going to talk about this guy that Chris really enjoyed. And then some stuff happened this week. And all of it's fine. None of it is, but wait, what? And none of it is narratively dangerous. But these things all happened, and I understood what this episode was about this morning because of all the things that happened. You ready?
Yeah, tell me what it's about.
Oh, no, I'm going to tell you the things that happened, and you're going to have to figure it out yourself.
Oh,
you're on your own.
Okay.
Okay. The first thing, when I take my daughter to ballet from school, it is a 30 to 45 minute drive in Atlanta traffic. Not quite rush hour, but getting there.
Yeah.
It has been good for one reason. As my wife points out, if you and your child are looking out at the world next to each other, they talk a lot more.
Okay.
It's a very contemplative kind of, hey, Dad, listen to this thing that happened, this thing that happened. And then can I ask you a question? And then what about this? And oh, yeah, I'll tell you about this thing. And so I've really enjoyed that part. And one of the more recent drives, she told me about school and how this class is bad. And then she paused, and then she said, Dad, do you wish we had religious rituals in our lives?
Wow.
Yeah. It you know, she's thinking about stuff. It's nice. All three of them are, but this one in particular. And my answer was, yeah, but no. You know, I get where you're coming from. You're probably thinking about, she just recently attended a bat mitzvah. So,
okay.
You know, that was, I'm sure, very cool and exciting. And also a little bit scary because there was a fully armed, I'm talking like assault rifle and bulletproof vest armed guard
Mm-hmm.
because of all the shit that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
This is before the Iran war. This is like earlier this year. Um, so she went to a bat mitzvah and she was pretty taken with the collective, like, celebration, tradition, history, and transformation.
Yeah.
But then also she's like, do you think we should have religious rituals? And I said, yeah, I do. And I understand the kind of pull. Like, I want to have some things that we do every week. I want to have some things that we look forward to. I love Christmas. I love Christmas because we all get together. And I put up with the matching pajamas and the decorating the tree, kind of. But also, I like doing that too. Going and getting a tree is kind of as close to a religious act as I as I participate in for Christmas. And when Casey and I first got married, we had a lot of parties. We had friends over all the time,
I
and
remember.
yeah, and we had, oh, I mean, we'd have people like you too. Uh,
Oh.
no, we'd have a lot of parties, and the end of those parties was often a I'm sorry, not the end, but the outcome of those parties was often a Sunday that we cleaned the apartment and,
Mm.
did all the dishes and found all the loose wine glasses. And that was ritual too, like that, the ecstatic party and then the aftermath. And I also said to her, like, the thing that I really enjoy is the, friend dinner where multiple families who are not related by blood gather and the kids all play and the adults all drink and talk and we have that thing. And I'm like, that is such a nice thing. It's almost like you need religion to say, you got to go to this. You
Mm-hmm.
got to attend Shabbat, I think is the dinner on Friday.
Yeah.
I apologize to Jewish listeners if I'm totally getting that wrong. Or the Friday night fish fry, just having the thing that you have to go to.
Yeah.
So even if you're feeling a little bit like, I don't really want to go hang, but God said so. So I'm going to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then last night, I saw The Dirty Three in Atlanta.
Oh, dude. Really?
Fucking dude. Yeah, really.
I've been wanting to go to the show here in Boston, but it's sold out.
Did it already happen?
I'm not sure. It's supposed to be in April, I believe.
Oh, fight for a ticket, dude.
Okay.
So The Dirty Three, for those who don't know, is the sorcerer, the king, and the jester. Because Warren Ellis is a sorcerer, as we have described many times. Like the way Warren Ellis, the multi instrumentalist, who might be at this point best known for being the violinist and music director for Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds currently. He is just a whirlwind and all that hair and all that beard. He's like, if you shrank Gandalf and then made him much less like rule based.
Yeah.
And then I don't know the names off the top of my head of the drummer and the guitarist, but the drummer is amazing. He is
Mm-hmm.
he can keep up a kind of structured cacophony for 15 minutes at a time. Shocking. And the guitarist is just this looming like cloud of sound, just sort of fills all the spaces.
So Jim White is the drummer and Mick Turner's the guitar player.
Thank you for looking that up. I kind of had their names mixed up. I would have called one Nick and the other Jim and gotten it wrong. Okay, but Mick Turner is a very textured, interesting player. Very kind of, he was just like a tree on stage. And then Jim White, the drummer, is just this sort of extraordinary meditative. The point I'm trying to make is that the show was a performance beyond the music being played. It was
Mm-hmm.
a ritualistic, ecstatic experience conducted by a madman and supported by two seasoned, proficient, and free players.
Yeah. Yeah.
twice in the show, Warren actually conducted the audience to sing with him and to sing parts of the songs. At one point, while conducting the singing, he also got everyone to take their phones out and show him pictures of their dead pets so they could sing in memoriam and like, let's wake these pets, all while
Wow.
keeping it together.
Oof.
And I want to make it
I would
very,
have fallen apart.
I know, I want to make it very clear. This is the deal. He was able to do a thing where he had a song going and he got the audience to do a kind of chaotic, dysregulated sort of activity, and they all did it for him, and he like looked at phones and said, oh, what a sweetie, while also keeping the thing going. Like he was a madman conductor, and it was as religious as I get, dude. Like it was extraordinary. I'm a little high off the whole thing.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have nightmares about the Iran war every night.
Tell me more.
I have nightmares about the Iran war every night.
In what capacity? That you are in Iran and you are seeing the damage that we are doing to them, or you're worried about the repercussions to our society and culture, or
Okay,
that
so if
the
no,
physical
no, I
ramifications would
get you.
come here?
If you say I had that dream again where I'm naked on the first day of class,
Yeah.
and then you go, oh yeah, I mean that's about your nervousness and your anxiety and your fears about what happened. All of my dreams are like that, where there's a very simple like, oh, you're dreaming of the desert and everyone's buried in the sand an inch down, and you
Yeah.
can only dig one person up before everybody dies.
Hmm.
Oh, that's about the war, you know. Uh,
Oh, I see what you mean.
you know,
Okay. So it's the theme, it's not the plot.
yeah, yeah. Like I hate that this is happening. I feel helpless. I am unsure of the uh, efficacy of all of the modes of resistance that we have entered into.
I think I am right there with you.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
talked about this on the show already. Yeah.
We have, yeah, and wow, we're so far off topic already, but I think it's okay.
No,
We're
no,
gonna
no,
bring it.
no.
We're gonna bring it home.
I'm about to bring it home. Yeah.
I know where you're going to, but I just want to say, for the listeners, in positioning us in space and time, yesterday was the third No Kings protest,
Yeah.
and I went down to that, and I was with a friend of mine, and the whole time the two of us kept saying to each other, "Is this doing anything?" You know, we're surrounded by 200,000 people in Boston Common, and we're like, "Is this is a Dropkick Murphys show? This isn't doing anything. The bombs are still dropping."
You keep the Dropkick Murphys name out of your fucking mouth, Chris.
Oh, I didn't realize you're from Southie. Yeah, they were the headliners of this protest, which is ironic to anybody who knows the history of the Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were talking about it, and another friend of mine was there, and I always fall back on this quote that I heard Ian MacKaye say once, which I've probably said on the podcast, and I've told you before, which is that protest isn't always about affecting change. Sometimes it's about just being together with other people and knowing you're not
Yes.
alone. And I think I'm trying to cycle this back to your original point, like that's ritual, right? Like
Yeah.
you're coming back to the ritual of it in that, like, okay, like we're doing this together. We're a community. We're coming together for one purpose.
And it's amazing that you brought up MacKaye, because that's the key to bring all of this back in.
Okay, let's
He
do it.
talks about his punk awakening as being the Cramps show in the
Mm.
70s. A platform of free expression, musically, artistically, sexually, fashion. It was in his mind, and he's talked about this like publicly. He saw the Cramps and it blew his mind that all of these people could be themselves and be freaky selves all in one place. So I realized when I put all of this together, that's what this episode is about. It's not about the record. It's about the fact that there was this thing that happened for a while that you're deeply connected to
Yeah.
that kind of embodies the artistic religious ecstasy that's possible by a very
Yeah.
charismatic leader
Hmm.
that may or may not be doing anything beyond internal self empowerment, can set the stage for transformation, can be a stand in for religious ritual, but does require certain forces, certain strengths that may or may not be present for the people who are participating.
Yeah, I think that's very true. So let me see if I can tie it back into the subject matter. Um, there was an episode of this show many years ago where Dave Moore was a guest host with us.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't remember what did we do? Was it Welcome to Night Vale? Maybe was the topic. Um
I'm going to look it up while you talk.
but in that conversation, he said something to the effect of like hearing me talk on the show about the music scene that I was a part of sounded like a cult. And because he had no familiarity with any of it. And I've heard other people say things like that before. Um, just recently, my yoga teacher did a yoga class with World Inferno as the theme.
Huh.
So I attend, well, I'll give her a free advertisement. I go to Health Goth Yoga. That's the name of the business. Goth is maybe a misnomer. Her name's Crystal, who runs the business. She has several other teachers. It's all virtual. And it's more of like an alt music yoga studio. And the idea is like every class has a different music theme, and there's a playlist that she or the other teachers make ahead of time. And sometimes they take requests. And somebody from, it wasn't me, somebody else from the classes asked for a World Inferno episode. And so she did one, or class, not episode. Um,
It's all the
and
same thing.
as she, it's true, as she began the class, she said something like, I was never like a fan of this band, but I always watched you all from afar, and I thought that looks like a cult.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll probably reference this, but there's a mini documentary on YouTube that we'll link to in the show notes about World Inferno that was shot around the time of this album coming out.
That
And
was about it being a cult.
yeah, there's multiple times within that documentary where people refer to it being a cult. Um, one time, almost 20 years ago, probably when this record came out, when I was in grad school, one of my colleagues, who was also a teaching assistant with me, looked at my World Inferno sweatshirt. I'm wearing one right now. It's not the same one, but it has the same logo, which is a globe that's burning with a cup of wine being held up over it. And she said, "Oh, is that some kind of Christian group?" And I laughed so hard. And I was like, "Wow, did you get me wrong?"
Oh no, but I love
Um,
it. I love it. No, it's so right too, Chris. It's so
yeah.
close to being correct.
But I kind of thought about it and I was like, oh, I can see why the symbols seem like they might be religious, right?
Yep.
And there is
WIFS also feels like that could be a Christian acronym.
right, yeah, totally. Um, but yeah, I think the overall sort of um big idea of World Inferno Friendship Society is that to many of the people who liked them, it was more than a band. It felt like something beyond that. And I guess hearing you talk about that Dirty Three show and thinking about the ideas of rituals and cults and all this stuff, I think maybe the best way to describe it was they created what I think it's Hakim Bey who maybe came up with this term originally, a temporary autonomous zone. They
Nice.
created a space where people felt like they could be themselves outside of society, and they had a unified purpose. And for a
Freedom that,
lot of the folks in those spaces, they did not feel that way anywhere else. They felt
yeah,
alien and outcast.
freedom to be unified without being the same, because the
Yeah.
thing that connected you was the adoration and appreciation of something else, not your sameness,
I think
which is
that's
very
true, but I
individual.
also think there were a set of values that were attached to
Oh,
it as well.
totally. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying at all like, oh, and so you couldn't use that to define yourself. I'm saying that instead of, oh, we're all from the same town and we all do the same things and we all,
Right.
have the same haircut and, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead, it's, I am exactly who I am. And like you next to me, I love Jack Terricloth and I want this to be our world right now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I don't know if in your time with the band prepping for this episode you were able to listen to their live album. I think it's called Live at North Six.
Chris, I was told that we would restrict this to
There's
addicted
no
to bad
homework.
ideas.
So there's a moment there's that's tied as my favorite live album of all time with Jesus Lizard's show. And there's a moment in that set where Jack Terrycloth is talking about Halloween because it's recorded during their one of their Hallowmass shows. And he says something to the effect of like, um, I don't know what like the Super Bowl means. But Halloween is my Super Bowl. And and I think you could say these same things about people who are sports fans, right? They
Yeah,
probably don't have moral values that connect them, but there is a space that's created for them to come together. Sports is a ritual, right? I think Lewis Black said something like that once, where he was like, I'm not a religious person, but I watch football every
yeah.
Sunday because I have to have a ritual.
And you can see in any sports fandom, you can see variations on ecstatic transformation or quiet contemplation or
Yeah.
unified ecstasy.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to pivot this hard because here's my intro,
Yeah,
which
all of this
is,
has just been table setting because now you and I can eat this meal that you've prepared.
well, but I have a little table setting too because I've had a thought in the back of my head for the last 5 years since Jack Terricloth died. And folks, we will tell you who he is and who this band is and what this album is shortly. I know this is a lot of upfront stuff. Um, the thought has been Jack Terricloth would be disappointed in me. Um, and I think what that is shorthand for is I'm getting older and am I compromising my values?
Are you using Jack Terrycloth as a stand-in for yourself when, like, a lot of people say, "Oh, younger me would be so disappointed in what's happened, where I'm at right now."
No, I don't think so. I think when I was younger, I would have had these same I would have had these same value thoughts. Yeah. So I'm going to give you one concrete example. I remember this very clearly, thinking Jack Terrycloth would be disappointed in me. So in May of 2024, there were some pretty severe pro-Palestinian protests in downtown Portland, and specifically at Portland State University, where I was working. One of the biggest ones that made the news were 30 some odd protesters took over our campus library, blocked it off, kept anybody from coming inside, although they claimed that they were going to let students in, but they wouldn't let any staff or faculty um, or obviously police inside. And they occupied it for a week and they smashed up the inside of it, like completely wrecked it. And you work in an academic library. Like imagine you couldn't go to work for a week. And when you got back, somebody had taken a hammer to your office and just smashed up all your
Oh yeah,
stuff and
no, I
stolen a
get it.
bunch of your shit. Um, all in the name of somehow stopping the genocide in Palestine. Um, and then a week or so after that, there was another protest. This one was at an administrative building where the president's office was. And there were less protesters, But they essentially got into a brawl with the campus police. And there was video of it. And during the brawl, during this fight, the chief of the campus police had a heart attack. And one side of the story of that day is that when the EMTs showed up to take him to the hospital, the protesters blocked them from getting to him and wouldn't let the ambulance leave. And I was there's two narratives to that story, and I know I wasn't there on the ground, so I don't know what actually happened. I saw video. I will say that, like, after what I saw that month on that campus, I'm inclined to believe that that happened. I was super angry at these protesters, even though I shared their cause of stopping this genocide. But I don't think Jack Terricloth would have been angry at those protesters, right? He, like, very clearly hated police. But to me, this is a value that I've had as long as I'm alive. Like, I don't like police. I don't. I fully understand the ramifications of the police state we live in and law enforcement's effect on our daily lives, especially people who are marginalized. But I also don't think that they should die because of that, right? Like, that doesn't make us any better. So I had this weird, like, uh, v- conflict of my values where I was like, oh, but wait a minute, like, I'm a leftist and I want to defund the police, but can I also want this want this guy to not die because he's essentially like enacting the values of the state upon these protesters? I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to get from religious ritual and cabaret style band leaders to you feeling the voice or face of Jack Terrycloth reminding you to fuck the police
Yeah,
as part of your value. This is going to be a windy road.
maybe. But we spent enough time sort of meandering.
Laying it out, yeah.
Let's just get into the meat and potatoes here. So, what are we talking about today? This is the fifth album by a band called the World Inferno Friendship Society. It came out in 2007. It's a concept album about the life of actor Peter Lorre.
In fact, the full title, which I know you've already heard, dear listener, but we've been talking for a while. Addicted to Bad Ideas, Peter Lorre's 20th Century.
So World Inferno, when I say band, I think there's some people who are like super fans of them that would maybe disagree with that term. They were almost more of a collective than a band. And they merged a lot of different genres in the music that they made. But I think the two that probably come out the most are punk rock and cabaret, which are
Mm-hmm.
not two that get merged together very often.
The moment this album started for me, oh, no, that's not true. The moment the first song on this album, not the overture piece, but the first song,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Gogol Bordello.
Yeah. I believe World Inferno is before Gogo Bordello.
They come from, I'm not saying in any way, oh, they took their thing. I'm saying that
Yeah.
that's the feeling of it, the kind
Hmm.
of um all of us are jumping around playing our instruments all at once,
Yeah.
informed by a sort of European musical history,
Hmm.
not a American blues musical history.
Yeah, I
Even
think
though
you're
that's
right.
in there, obviously. But
Yeah, and when I say that too, it's not to say like, oh, they were first. It's more like I think they influenced Gogo Bordello. Although I think the difference between the two, I think Gogol Bordello is more informed by actual like ethnic heritage
yeah,
because I believe,
explicitly about Eastern
yeah,
European
at
roots. Yeah,
least the main guy, the front guy, I can't remember his name, is Ukrainian, I
I
think,
believe it's
maybe.
Eugene.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
also,
so
that's not what this episode's about.
no, but anyway, but they're a maybe more popular band as a point of reference for people. If you've
Yeah.
heard them before, you have somewhat of an idea of what we're talking about. The other thing about World Inferno is that it was led by a man who went by the name Jack Terricloth, which was a pseudonym for a person named Peter Ventantonio. And Peter Ventantonio, Jack Terricloth, died in May of 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic. This is a description of the band that comes from a somewhat mainstream news outlet. This is by Chris Jordan writing for TCA Regional News. He said, the band can be described as a punk cabaret, but a broader analysis of their cacophonous roar would include swing, hot jazz, and rock. Lyrically, the band's retro stylings explored historical subjects such as civil rights activist Paul Robeson, Peter Lorre, German propaganda filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl, and the Weimar era Germany. Terrycloth on stage recalled a wisecracking, physically dangerous version of Joel Grey in Cabaret.
Sideburn, Joel Grey. Okay. And I will toss in our context for Peter Lorre. Uh, Peter Lorre, who is the idea that informs so much of the record, but also seems to embody a piece of Jack Terricloth's obsessions. You know,
Yeah.
he was a Hungarian actor. You have, because you are a person in the world, you've seen some kind of remediation of Peter Lorre at one point or another. He is fundamentally out there in the world. Like there's Peter Lorre caricatures have appeared in Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
impressions of Peter Lorre's kind of simpering but also malevolent persona are kind of throughout comedy and remix society.
And
Uh,
I think too, like maybe some generational context. For me, I'm Gen X. I'm almost 50 years old as we're recording this. Peter Lorre is like just outside of my purview of like cultural context. Like I
yeah,
was
yeah,
aware of who he was, but a lot of the things that he's known for were not things that were the only thing that I really remember him from was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
yeah. So he started as a stage actor before moving to Germany. I actually thought he was German because I didn't know much about him. So
Mm,
Hungarian actor, that surprises me. He left Germany when the Nazis came to power. He was in German expressionist movies like Fritz Lang's M, and he was in Alfred Hitchcock's The Man Who Knew Too Much. And at the time that he worked with Alfred Hitchcock, he was actually doing a lot of his lines phonetically instead of,
yeah.
I don't know, impressionistically, because he hadn't learned English quite as well as he would eventually. He was in The Maltese Falcon. He was in Casablanca. He was in Arsenic and Old Lace, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Around the World in 80 Days. Here's a little poll. He was also the original Le Chiffre in the 1954 television version of Casino Royale. And just in case you like him too much, he also played a Japanese detective named Mr. Moto in a series of B films in the 1930s,
Which is a
because that's how we
pretty
did shit back then.
yeah, it's pretty racist uh, caricature of a Hungarian man's idea of what a Japanese person was like.
Yeah. So Peter Lorre has played uh, evil characters and misguided characters and tormented characters. He has an insanely expressionistic face and big eyes, and his voice is seductive and irritating all at once. He's like Vincent Price after wishing a bad wish with a genie. Like just things have happened to Peter Lorre,
Hmm.
and he's a very striking figure also because of behind him being this actor and personage. He was a morphine addict, and he had a lot of financial troubles, and he was a tormented person, much the same as his on-screen image.
Yeah, and that seems to be the attraction for the band, but primarily for Jack Terrycloth for the subject matter of this album. And to be clear, This album has three songs on it that are from earlier in their discography. There was a little bit of pushback on them, including them on the album, but I think they were included because they were also about Peter Lorre, and they
Oh,
realized
okay.
like we want to do this sort of full
Yeah.
album experience about his life.
Which is sort of like someone saying, "Oh, I've been thinking about this for a while now."
Yeah.
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 All right.
So let's unpack Jack Terrycloth because we what we threw out for you is a pretty shorthand version of it. And I think it's almost impossible to describe him in this conversation. So I would definitely recommend, I think the easiest way to get a taste for it is if you watch that documentary I mentioned that's on YouTube.
That'll be on the Libsyn page and on Patreon. Okay. Jack Terrycloth is not World Inferno Friendship Society, but he is the only constant member of it. It existed from 1996 to 2021, which was his death. He started in punk bands in New Jersey, right? He
Yeah.
was the guitarist and vocalist for Sticks and Stones, which, if you haven't heard of it, you're with everybody else.
Oh man, I love like actually pre World Inferno, I was a Sticks and Stones fan too. I had no idea who he was, but I thought they were a cool band. But
I know
also
you liked Sticks
I
and Stones,
but I
Chris.
existed in a very yeah, it's super niche. Like if World Inferno's niche, Sticks and Stones is like even further away. Yeah.
So, Peter Ventantonio is a Bridgewater, New Jersey native. He retained his New Jerseyness. He references it in songs. Um, he became Jack Terrycloth on purpose and devised a character. So we have a couple quotes here. I don't know if this is him talking about himself or just the Jack Terrycloth persona was charismatic and belligerent, advocating for drinking, lying, traveling, stealing, doing drugs, keeping enemies, always looking one's best, getting in fights, befriending hobos, and walking the walk. He was a raconteur
He
and
was, yeah.
yeah,
But he
and
wasn't a radio raconteur.
no, he radio takes far too much infrastructure for him to have taken
That's
part in.
true, yeah.
He was a scoundrel in his character. That's kind
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
personage that he presented. You know, he slicked his hair back, and he looked very sort of clean and put together in a way. He was not anything in personality like David Byrne, but the kind of timelessness of his stage outfit,
Hmm.
kind of reaching back past even the retro that was popular at the time. He wore suits to be out of time.
Yeah, I think so. Although I think one thing I want to say is I think it's hard to tell how much of Jack Terrycloth was the persona and how much was the real man. And we'll see that in the research notes. Like people who are close with him will say similar things. Um, so I get the impression that he dressed like that every day, not just for shows, but maybe less of a fancier version of it. But he was, dapper.
Yeah,
Um, uh, I would describe the persona of Jack Terrycloth as somewhere between Cab Calloway, Emma Goldman as like a sort of anarchist public speaker type uh, figure, and like on stage he has like a very David Yao charisma minus the like taking his clothes off and crowd surfing
yeah.
part.
He
Yeah,
was not. He was confrontational with the crowd in like literally confronting them, like being in that space and touching
yeah.
them and all that. But I don't think he was aggressively attacking them much. That
No,
that
no.
wasn't in the literature here.
Um,
He comes from a tradition of having a different name and being a different, quote unquote, different person on stage,
yeah,
but he seems to have gone
yeah.
a little farther with it. There's something you say here, you yourself, Chris, that you feel like he kind of was um, the character was an on purpose deconstruction of what a front man is like.
Yeah, that's how I always felt watch. I probably saw World Inferno 10 times. I never got to go to a Hallowmass, but I saw them a lot. Whenever they came to a town that I was living in, I would go see them. Um, this is kind of a fun story. Um, when they first started off in '96, they had one 7 inch, and it was, I think it's on Gern Blanston Records. And the guy who owned Gern Blanston reached out to me because I set up shows in New Hampshire at the time when I was in college. And he asked if I would book a World Inferno show at the University of New Hampshire. And he sent me the 7 inch. And I listened to it and I was like, I don't understand what this is. But I was like, that's okay. Like I'll book them on a show. And then he was like, they have a $250 guarantee because there's 12 people in the band. And I was like, at the time, this is '96, I was like, I don't have $250 and I can't guarantee that there's going to be that many people that show up to this show. So sorry, but I can't book this
Yeah,
show. And
that's a
I
bummer.
kicked myself ever since. Like I should have just coughed up $250 myself. Yeah.
You didn't know.
I
You
had no
didn't know.
idea. Yeah.
There's an obituary for Terricloth. I'm going to just say Terricloth throughout because his real name has a few stumbling points for me.
Well, I
In,
think too
in
that he himself thought of himself as Jack. Like
yeah,
later on, there's a quote where he's like, "Pete's dead."
Pete's dead. I'm Jack. Pete
Yeah,
V is gone. Yeah.
yeah.
So as a teenager, this is from the obituary. As a teenager, he was inspired by punk rock and stars like David Bowie, who created their own personas, and that makes total sense. Like
Yeah.
he is just the little bit I saw of him in the documentary. He's very charismatic, very compelling, and a big part of that is that he's intentional and put together.
Hmm.
In the mid '90s, as punk went mainstream, Peter, that's who he's, that's the name in the obituary. Peter began to conceptualize a genre offshoot that would incorporate theatrical presentation and a charismatic, world weary frontman character. We are a punk rock band and we play punk rock shows, but our music couldn't be more different, he told the Times. Kids see us and think guys in suits and makeup at a hardcore show? Come on. But we always have them by the third song. And then we're something they have to accept about the punk rock scene and about the world. We've now entered into the great dialogue that is our culture. That
I,
makes perfect sense, also. And
yeah.
that's why I thought of Ian MacKaye talking about the Cramp show.
Hmm.
Like the point of it was, yeah, we're punk rock. You don't have to sound like punk rock or look like punk rock to be punk. You have to be within a free space where you define your own thing.
Exactly. And I think when I discovered World Inferno was right around the time that I was starting to come to that conclusion myself. And I really um, enjoyed how they celebrated that, how they celebrated pushing the limits of what the subculture would allow.
Yeah. There's a bit in the obituary that says the group's self mythologizing sometimes made its history murky. Even the name Jack Terricloth has various apocryphal origin stories. Mr. Cavallaro, someone being quoted here, recalled Terricloth acquiring it from an old girlfriend. Others said he took the name to distinguish himself from another Pete. The ultimate reason seemed to matter less than the act of self reinvention and his audiences being in on the act. And a keyboardist for World Inferno Friendship Society said, Jack made you feel that you were part of a secret society.
So that's Franz Nicolai that's being quoted there. And I'd say, other than Jack, he's probably the most well known member of World Inferno. Um, he's been in some other like pretty big name punk bands, The Hold Steady. I
Oh,
think I
yeah.
think he might have also been in Against Me for a minute. I'm not sure, but um, uh, I'm putting a pin in his name because there's a piece that we're going to read from later that is his remembrance of Jack Terricloth after Jack died. And I found it this week actually doing the research. I'd never read it before. And I think it is the key to unlocking everything for this episode, but we're going to save it for mostly towards the end.
Okay. Terricloth always gave credit to the band that he was part of. Like he was not, I am doing my thing and I'm supported by these people. He pulled in everybody. He said, I'd
Yeah.
be nowhere without the band. They're a great bunch of players, and I'm lucky enough to get to have a large pool of people who used to be in the band or are in the band or will be in the band again to call on, and very rarely pay them, which is also great. Now, you mentioned off air that like sometimes Terricloth, when you read his quotes, you're a little bit like, oh my God, this is
Yeah,
embarrassing.
when he speaks them out loud, they don't come across that way. But when you read them out of context, it feels like a 14-year-old is talking.
Yeah, he has a kind of arch sardonic delivery.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, like in the documentary, cutting from him saying something like, oh, it doesn't pay too much and we can't afford it, but we still do it. And then cutting to someone else is like, well, I told myself that if I didn't do this, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Like there was that
Yeah.
support too.
Yeah, and I also it's so this is one of the reasons why I think that Franz Nicolai piece is going to be important. I used to hear him say things like that, and I would think, "Oh, this is all part of the act, right?" Like,
Oh,
uh, he surely these people get paid. Uh,
but now you know.
well, there's literally we'll find it in there. Like Franz Nicolai straight up says, like, no, like none of us got paid. Like
Yeah,
we were all, starving. I think Franz Nicolai says in the documentary, like this band made me homeless.
and he does. And Jack Terrycloth was seen with that kind of hypnotic power.
Yeah.
Um, Here is what was posted on the website of World Inferno Friendship Society after he died. We are devastated to say that our guiding spirit, instigator, inciter, the person who, to most of us, lived under the name Jack Terrycloth, has left us for the astral plane. We will be working on plans for a celebration of his extraordinary life. For now, we want to thank Jack for inspiring this remarkable community, something more than simply band, family, or scene, which changed the lives of so many people in ways that are hard to articulate, and which is perhaps the most enduring part of his legacy. Please raise a glass of your choice in his memory. We shall not see his like again. And yeah, when Terrycloth was asked one time, how do you want to be remembered? He said, just to be remembered would be swell. Maybe remembered as that guy who was brave and gave me some ideas.
Mm.
It wasn't an act in the sense of, let me get out of these clothes and get home to my wife and kids and my couch and my TV.
Yeah.
He was trying to be the person that he was pretending to be.
Yeah. Um, they mention in that uh, message about his death that they were going to plan some celebrations of his life. And like, I don't remember the exact details, but there was a Kickstarter for all of it. I think they did three separate events. Like it was a lot. Like it was a ritual.
Yeah,
And in addition to all those events, the Kickstarter funded their last album, which was essentially the recordings that were on hand that had not been published
yeah,
prior to his death. Um, it also established a nonprofit, which, like you can't say this about a lot of punk bands. Like in 2022, I believe the remainder of the Kickstarter funds went towards starting what's called the Jack Terricloth Foundation, which is founded by his sister Lisa and another member of the band, Scott Hollingsworth. The aim of this nonprofit is to promote the arts and marginalized voices. I think it's like not scholarships, but it almost gives like awards yearly to people to do projects, art projects.
yeah. And there's evidence from when the band was active that it was more than just this is how we make our money.
Yeah,
This is the thing we put on. Because when the record came out during the pandemic, that couldn't be properly celebrated, performed, done live. They still made sure to do something for that Halloween tradition.
yeah,
Here's the description. Jack Terrycloth was determined to find a way to preserve the band's Halloween tradition for its biggest fans. So the band devised a scavenger hunt in which clues to the location of an outdoor performance were scattered throughout Brooklyn. 50 to 60 fans made it to the show, which was on the roof of the Brooklyn Children's Museum.
There was a whole like online component to this where you had to solve these like internet puzzles that would then like once you solved each of them, it would like unlock a video of like
Oh yeah.
a performance that they did. Um, I think there like part of it was like they got together and played in a cemetery. Um, and yeah, the reason why I added that part in there is because there I found some weirdness. I have not like gone digging for information about this band before other than my own personal experience with it. And when I was doing the research, I found there's a Reddit thread. It's extremely bizarre where someone claims that Jack faked his own death and had been planning to do so for years. And this person starts off by saying, "Yeah, I knew Jack Terricloth, and years before he quote unquote died, he told me that he was purposely going to fake his own death when he turned 50, so that he could, live out the rest of his life in privacy." And the original poster and their post is less important than the response to it in this Reddit thread, which is there's some folks who sort of entertain the idea, but there are a lot of folks who were what so big time fans of the band refer to themselves as Infernites. So I would call these people Infernites. These were people who went to those funeral celebrations. They were furious in that thread and just like shredding this person. They were like, I literally held his dead hand at the funeral.
Oh,
Like you can't tell me that this guy faked his own death. And it was again like I think more evidence of like how impactful this project was to certain people.
yeah, yeah. But that also wasn't just a random thought that someone had. I mean, he presented as a prankster.
For sure. I mean, many of the responses in that Reddit thread are like, if anybody's going to fake their own death, it would be Jack
Right.
Terricloth.
Yeah. And you said your sense of the interviews was that maybe sometimes he was just making shit up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
having fun with a persona. Like, I was an awkward child. I was pigeon toed and wore braces on my legs. Um, but there's also this real thing that happened. I'm going to read the full quote, and then I want to hear you tell me what this makes you think as a person who enjoyed the band.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is Jack Terrycloth. One day, I called the operator. This is back when you could just pick up the phone and get an operator, and quoted a suicidal tendencies song. I said, I shot President Reagan and I'm going to shoot him again and again. This is when he was in high school. Little did I know that Reagan was in the next town over. The Secret Service took it all very seriously and closed my high school. The next day, my punk rock gang went to the school library to make photocopies of an article about it. The librarian noticed. The principal caught one of us and threatened him. Now, first off, the librarian was a snitch. Oh, man.
Yep.
He cracked his one of his buddies. He cracked under the old "this is going to go on your permanent record" bit. The Secret Service swooped in at my bus stop and held me incommunicado for a day and a half. They even took a gun out and rested it on the table in front of me like a movie. Eventually, they realized that I was just a kid, but gosh, if that sort of thing were to happen today, imagine how much more trouble I would have been in. It got me probation, which prevented me from quitting high school a year later. It didn't end there. Supposedly, they expunge your record when you turn 21, but for years, I would get a phone call whenever a president was in central New Jersey that would ask, "What are you doing today? Not thinking of going to Somerville, are you?" No, I wouldn't dream of going to Somerville.
Yeah. So this is actually the basis for one of their songs, which is
Yeah.
about this whole story. I have no idea if this is real or not. I suspect that there is a real version of this and that it gets inflated every time he tells the story. The bit about them putting the gun on the table,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
stuff
That
like
part I
that.
don't think is true.
Like, but I'm sure, yeah, there was some, he pulled some prank and the authorities were like, don't do that. But it has turned into this whole, myth now. And I think that was a lot of it. I think
Yeah.
I don't think he was lying necessarily about a lot of these things, but I think he was self-aggrandizing.
Yeah. I want to pull a couple of quick quotes from more of this interview, just as like, here's more Jack Terrycloth.
Mm.
What got you interested in cabaret music? Do you remember when you first remembered your Weimar? That's a very odd question. Uh, I rediscovered Kurt Weill when I was bartending at the Continental. I'd given up making music and gave up on punk rock, but wanted something that was still political. Are downloading and file sharing forms of piracy that you endorse? I endorse all forms of piracy. Information wants to be free. The best thing about the World Inferno forum is the sharing page where the kids in the greater World Inferno community ask each other for records. Uh, Bands make money at shows. Record companies make money off records.
Yeah. I
Do you?
thought that was an especially interesting quote, especially today. He saw the beginning of this, obviously. And so the last time I saw them play live was in 2019. Um, and I think it's accurate. You can ask most musical artists today, like they're not making money off of their records unless you're Taylor Swift, right? Like
Yeah. And even
the
then, like the money for Taylor Swift, I believe it was in that concert in the
right,
in the tour
yeah.
recently, not so much in the records.
Well,
And
yeah, albums are marketing material
yeah,
now.
and I
And
I do the same. I'm part of the problem. When a band releases a record and I'm interested in it, I listen to it on my streaming service. I do that.
yeah,
I got to
I
go to
just
more shows, man.
so I yes, that's I think that's a good thing too to help support groups, but also, something I try to do, I'm not as good about this as I should be, but um I try to throughout the year clock which new albums that I listen to the most,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the end of the year, those are the ones that I try to go out and buy on vinyl.
Yeah. Okay. Here's my summation from this interview. On your live album from 2001, you relate a story about how a friend that has abandoned punk rock for a more traditional lifestyle asks you how you keep doing what you do. And you reply, because I hate you and I'm trying to show you that you're wrong. How's the battle going? And Terricloth says, it's still going and it is the exact same battle. I'm not on Facebook, but my sister is. I believe that's a song. And all of my old punk rock friends are getting in touch with her to get in touch with me. All they want to talk about is back then, but it's not back then for me. It's a long, hard struggle and it never ends. What's the option? Give up? I'm not doing that.
How does that quote ring for you? Because I thought of you when I dropped that in, and I know the quote that they're referring to from the live album.
Yeah. Oh, well, so the thing that struck me was if I had built a value system out of my self destructive, desperate for connection behavior, then I might have refused to give it up.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
my self destructive, desperate for connection behavior was soothed when I met my wife, and she wanted a more traditional lifestyle. She's not a more traditional person. She's not a more traditional mind, but she wanted a family.
yeah.
And I was super into it. And that is why I gave up anything that I gave up. That's as close
Um,
to connecting to that quote as I can get.
yeah, I mean, I think for me, like that ties back to what I was talking into the beginning, right? Like he clearly expresses like a disappointment in people who express the same values as he did years ago, but then seem to have grown out of them. And now only like reminisce about the nostalgia of those times, right? And I think that's a common experience on both sides of that description. That's a common experience for people our age. Um, some of us feel like, oh, I feel guilty because I'm not living into my values as much as I wish I was, right?
Yeah.
Or the other side of it, like folks like Jack feel resentment towards the people who have gotten older, matured, become maybe more traditional is the right term. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I think in the on the album he says something like, "Yeah, my old friends, like when they see me, they say, I don't understand how at your age that you're still so angry and I used to be in a punk band and it was great." He says something to the effect of like, "We used to get a stomp going," and and then he's like, that's when he says the like. they say, "How do you keep doing it?" And he says, "Because I hate you, and I'm trying to show you that you're wrong."
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, it's interesting because like I again, like I've listened to that album probably 1,000 times, and I kind of chuckle every time I hear that quote. I've always thought it was hyperbole. And then
But it
later
wasn't.
on, yeah, like later on, like we'll find out from Franz Nicolai, it was not.
Okay. Well, let's give the record the proper production explanation.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's name the players. This is a little bit like saying, so there's also an inker and a colorist and a letterer on a comic book. Um, the lineup on Addicted to Bad Ideas was bass by Sandra Malik, drums by Ben Koch and Kevin Razka, guitar by Lucky Strano. I kind of think that that's not a real name. Lead vocals by Jack Terricloth. Oh, that must be a real name. Percussion by Semra. Is that
I think
Urchin?
it's Urchin, yeah.
Piano by friends Nikolai and Raja Najib Azar. And saxophones by Ken Thompson, Maura Corrigan, and Peter Hess. Can I just say, Peter Hess in that documentary, he is the multiverse leader of World Inferno Friendship Society. His charisma, I'm like, oh, that would be a very different band, but he seems like he could have led it.
So the first time I saw them was in 1999. And I saw them up until 2019. So I saw them over the course of 20 years. Um, and I would say my favorite iteration, there were over 40 members of this band
Yeah,
over its time.
with lots of crossover. They didn't
Yeah,
disband and reform. They just kind of
right.
changed. Yeah,
This is my favorite lineup. Sandra Malik, in my mind, is the bass player. Lucky Strano is the guitar player.
gotcha.
Semra Urchin is a definable part of their live presence. Like she brought so much to it. It wasn't just Jack.
Yeah, yeah,
These folks added a lot to it. Franz Nicolai both played keyboards and accordion. Peter Hess and Maura Corrigan were always the horn players at the best shows that I went to. And yeah, so to your point, like Peter Hess has always been to me like he's the guy. Like I remember being like, how did this guy get in this band? Like because he seems like such a normal, like just everyday like horn player, and but he adds so much to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, it was produced by Don Fury. I don't have any credits for him. Do you know who Don Fury is?
Oh, I do know who Don Fury is just because like he's kind of a luminary in the hardcore scene as a
Okay,
recording
yeah,
engineer. Yeah. So he recorded this album at Cyclone Sound, which is at Coney Island in Brooklyn. Um, the thing that's interesting about Don Fury is like the bands that he's known for recording are nothing like World Inferno. So like here's some names. Gigi Allen, Agnostic Front, Sick of It All, Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits. Like he's known Burn, Madball, Helmet, Quicksand, Born Against. He's known for recording what I would think I think of as like tough guy bands
yeah, yeah,
or like youth crew band, hardcore bands. And then later on, he started doing some kind of post-hardcore stuff. But like World Inferno is not like any of this stuff, but they're still steeped in that world.
yeah. I mean, he said Jack Terricloth did. We play punk rock. We just do it with horns, and I wear a suit and makeup.
Yeah, yeah,
All right. The So as we said, the a couple of the songs or three of the songs on the record were composed before the composition process for the record, but they were about or inspired by Peter Lorre. A lot of the lyrics are quotes from Lorre in movies or quotes from him in life, including the biography, The Lost One, A Life of Peter Lorre by Stephen D. Youngkin. The cover art looks kind of like the posters for M. Um, and it came out on the Bouncing Souls record label.
yeah. I assume that the connection there is that Bouncing Souls is a New Jersey band, and Bouncing Souls and Sticks and Stones kind of came up at the same
Right,
time.
right.
So I think that they've known each other for a long time. Um, so Bouncing Souls label Chunksaw is kind of an odd label because it started off as like a way for Bouncing Souls to release their own recordings, but then they ended up like having enough success that they've been able to put out music by other bands. But it's also um like a label that mainly does re-releases on vinyl of albums that come out on other labels but don't have vinyl
Oh
releases.
yeah. That's the thing that happens now because of I think how much it costs to do a vinyl press.
Yeah, so for instance, Bouncing Souls is an Epitaph band now, and I think Epitaph puts out CDs and like probably handles all their digital distribution, but the vinyl for Bouncing Souls records comes out on Chunksaw.
Yeah.
And but I think with World Inferno they handled everything for this album.
Uh, this does not seem to have been a money making venture for anyone.
Right, yeah.
Along with the album, it was also this like big stage show, like a really crafted, choreographed stage show.
Yeah.
In 2009, the band did this at festivals in Philadelphia, New Jersey, and South Carolina, because there always has to be an outlier. Um,
I went to the South Carolina one and I have a great story about it.
nice. Were you down here in 2009?
I was,
Oh
yeah.
my God, that was forever ago. Well, listen, instead of me reading all of these quotes about the show, why don't you say your experience with the show?
So, I want to say that the term festivals is misleading here. If we've been talking about a punk band this whole time and you say festival, you're probably thinking like Warp Tour or something like that. These are, so I went to Spoleto in Charleston, South Carolina to see this. Do you know about Spoleto, Charlie?
I do not.
I did not either until I went up to this. Spoleto is like a fancy pants, highfalutin arts festival. This is not like where punk bands play.
Okay.
This is like ballet and fine art galleries and classical music. It's suit and tie affairs. And I went up and stayed with a friend who lived in Charleston and went to this show and it was in a theater. And so what they did was they performed the album and then they also had theatrical interludes between the songs where they did like sketches essentially.
Yeah.
And they did it kind of like a live radio play. And Jack played Peter Lorre and he did like a Peter Lorre voice and everything. Um, and then like the interludes would sort of thematically lead into the next song. So it was like the album plus like, maybe another 30 minutes of like theatrical material. And then at the end, they would just play a set of like the rest of their music. And so but the crowd at this show. So first of all, the theater was not sold out. Like
yeah.
this big Spoleto event of all of those, folks, few of them attended this event. It was, I would say half of it was World Inferno fans like myself, and half of it were Spoleto people who were like, "Ooh,
Came to
this is
see what happened.
a play about Peter Lorre." Mm.
Yeah.
And I watched them one by one get up and walk out of the room in
Yeah.
the middle of this presentation. It was fascinating.
I think this kind of all comes back to we need a guarantee of 250 because there's 10 people in the band. Like
Yeah,
it's clear that it's said in too many interviews and it's too obvious in the evidence of what actually happened. It's clear that um, they had to, quote unquote, had to do this kind of stuff because they wanted to and they wanted to have done it, and they had to scrimp and cheat
yeah,
and put up with not having enough money to do it. Like Terricloth says that there's a debt to the producer still. The producer being Jay Scheib, who was a theater professor at MIT, who had done previous multimedia work. Terricloth says we're not paying him back, and
right.
says it kind of like we're not paying him back, But there's no money in music is a refrain from band members, from Terricloth, and from what you're talking about. the show was not sold out. They did not. They might have made their guarantee that everybody gets $10 and a place to sleep, but who knows?
Yeah. I so two things I want to talk about here. One is that I would also say uh, any of the other shows that I saw them at that weren't World Inferno headlining shows, they were still the odd man out. Like
Yeah.
I saw them on tours where it was like, mini festivals where there were like 10 bands. And even amongst like nine other punk rock bands, they were kind of the band that everybody was like, who? What's
Mm-hmm.
this? Huh. And like similar to what he said earlier, you would see folks be like, what is this? And then they would kind of like slowly get turned on to them over the course of the set. Um, the other thing I want to point out here is in his interview about these theatrical productions, he speaks to sort of the thesis statement of this album, I think, more than anywhere else in the research.
Yeah.
He's
We have to talk about, to finish off consumption, we have to talk about why Peter Lorre.
Yeah, so he says, I find Peter Lorre to be strangely charismatic. He's an extremely creepy person, which I think most punk rockers can identify with. This is wild. At the time, he was 38. He says, Peter Lorre is the lure of the other. He's the underdog. He's the outsider. Lorre is an excellent way to examine the 20th century historically and the concerns and problems of every artist who works in the culture wars. And I think what he means there, like when you look at Peter Lorre's filmography, he sort of traveled around the world during all of these major events throughout the 20th century, right? Like he made a movie with Fritz Lang. He was in Nazi Germany. He uh, went to London and made a film with Alfred Hitchcock after he fled
Yeah.
Germany, like
Here's Jack Terricloth talking in the same way that you're talking. Everywhere I looked in the 20th century, Peter Lorre, was there. He was born in Transylvania. What punk rocker doesn't have a thing for vampires? He moved to Vienna, where he worked with Fritz Lang. He moved to Berlin, in Weimar, and worked with Bertolt Brecht. There was some unpleasantness in Germany in the 30s, and he was Jewish, so he left for London. Now, that right there, that's a key piece to the whole. If you read it, it can seem like you fucking,
yeah,
you know, anyway. In London, he worked with Alfred Hitchcock, worked phonetically since he didn't speak English yet. It fascinates me someone could do that. He moved to Hollywood. He worked with John Huston and Humphrey Bogart. He was interviewed informally by the HUAC at his home, the House Un-American Activities Committee. After the war, he moved back to East Germany to work with Brecht again. He was a lifelong drug addict. He did everything that was good to do in the 20th century. Now, however true that sentiment is felt by Jack Terricloth,
yeah,
the fact that he would say he did everything that was good to do in the 20th century from that list of things kind of sums up his
his worldview.
his idea of self and what's important.
Yeah, and I think in these interviews, I think too, he does not tap into the value system that's behind these songs. And I want to talk about that a little later in the episode when we get to themes and
Yeah.
identity. There's one last bit I want to talk about, sort of explaining World Inferno before we move into the consumption section of the episode, which is we hinted around this. Every year at Halloween, World Inferno would perform a special Halloween show that they called Hallowmass. And they were not just shows, they were like these big performance art pieces. And every year there was like a different plan for it. We talked about this earlier when you were talking about the scavenger
Yeah.
hunt, and
Yeah.
I talked about the online component. That was Hallowmass for that year. Um, like one year the audience made these big effigies of Jack and set them on fire by a puppet cat, I think. And then like there was another year where there was a string quartet that was in the hallway as you walked in. They had circus performances. We'll hear about this later, but there was like a year where the show ended and all of a sudden a marching band burst out from behind the scenes and like led the entire audience out the venue and down the street. Um, and it was all based around one song that they have. It's not on this album. It's called Pumpkin Time, which is it's kind of like the World Inferno theme song, and they only played Pumpkin Time at Hallowmass. Um, and it's Pumpkin Time is about the Peanuts Great Pumpkin cartoon story.
It's the
But
Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Please get it
yeah,
right.
yeah. And like that's another like these points of references for what he found as symbolic value points, like Charlie Brown and Peter Lorre. These like two hugely disparate things were important to him.
Except you could do a thesis on how the outsider, as embodied in Charlie Brown, for a sort of American
Absolutely.
value, and Peter Lorre for a European value. You could definitely
Yeah.
make those connections.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing here. My self destructive depression for a long time was soothed by maintaining a chaotic and untethered lifestyle. I leaned into drinking, writing, photography, and kind of performance art of being a Charles Bukowski sort of character.
Yeah.
And while the end result of Jack Terricloth's work and his artistic push is much more interesting and admirable than anything I ever managed, I see a little bit of that drive to create artistic chaos around completely unmanageable, dysregulated feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I feel some kinship, empathy, and sorrow about that.
I'm glad that you said that because I think maybe this is a good point to place that pin in that like it's hard for me to be objective about this because I fell for his charisma, like I was a member of the cult. But yeah, like in retrospect, he was clearly a person who was hurting and was not living a life well lived, even though he was doing all these cool things and inspired all these people. You're right. Like his life was self-destructive and he burnt himself out early. And I think he burned bridges with a lot of the people that were close to him too.
Yeah. And he was compelling enough that some people started to burn themselves out too.
Yeah. So this seems like a good point to take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about how the audience reacted to this album in particular.
Hey, Chris, are you comfortable with these episodes being mostly therapy?
I think that's the best way they can be.
Yeah. I did not understand what we were getting into when we relaunched Super Context, that it was going to be 3 hour mutual friend therapy sessions
Mm, hmm.
that felt really satisfying. And I don't know, man. I really like that our friendship has been rekindled by this, and that I would never fucking listen to you talking about this for 3 hours if it weren't for the show. And so I'm really grateful for that. And you should be too.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best podcasts are the ones that are authentic and vulnerable. And I think that that was something that we learned over the course of the first 4 years of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time that we wrapped it up, we hit our stride with that. Like I said in this episode, I've been going back and listening to some of our earlier
Yeah, we
episodes.
ended it just when we were getting good at it.
Totally. It only took us 4 years. Yeah. We're back in that sweet spot. We as they say in the biz, we've hit the ground running.
Fuck you. And also, all that to say, you who is listening to the Patreon spot, if you like what we're doing, head over to patreon.com/supercontext, join up, throw us some money, and we'll keep doing it. Probably even if you don't give any money, but it's nice to have a little more change in our pockets. We're not that much like Jack Terricloth, even with my drinking and Chris's self-loathing. And we're back. Hey, Chris, I love it when I find notes like this in the script, in our show notes. There are no sales numbers, no quantified reviews on Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes, just the subjective reviews that came out in music writing at the time of release.
Yeah.
What a joy. What a joy not to have to read any numbers for this part of the.
But I mean, it also I think goes to show you like this is probably regarded as their most popular album. He says as much in the notes later on. But it's a blip. Like a lot of people, even in the punk rock community, are unfamiliar with it or this band. And this is definitely not the kind of thing where there's like public sales numbers about it. I even thought for a second, I was like, I wonder if I wrote to Chunksaw if anybody would tell me, but I figured it probably wasn't worth it.
I think that we should not faint toward journalism. I think it's important for us to do this show the way we do it, in that it is at its core two guys talking about pieces of art that interest them,
Yeah.
pieces of pop art that interest them. And we buttress that with research and actual things we find
Hmm.
in articles, academic or otherwise. But when something is in the space of being detached from the metrics
Yeah.
and the market of what a lot of the stuff that we deal with exists in, I think we can honor that by being like, this seems to be a mostly word of mouth and take your friend to the show kind of thing. And
Hmm.
I have no doubt that at least one of those people in South Carolina who came to the show saying, "Oh, a play about Peter Lorre." By the end of it, they were like, "Well, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder what that's about." But I bet
I
you it was just one or two.
I do definitely recall there being a few people like that who were
Yeah.
left over. There was one woman who must have been in her 80s who was grinning ear to ear the whole time.
So here is now what kind of one step away people were saying about the record and insinuating what they knew about World Inferno Friendship Society. And this is important because I don't know anything, and you've dragged me into your personal experience of this band. Like I now I'm thinking about Jack Terricloth's teeth more than I'm thinking about the record. But here we go.
Let me give you a pause about the teeth.
Oh, okay, sure.
Here's a fun story.
Oh
During
shit.
during the pandemic, before he died, so in between the beginning of the pandemic and his death, one of the things they sold in the merch store in order to try to continue to make revenue while they
Yeah.
couldn't tour was a mask that was just a screen print of his mouth with his teeth bared.
Yeah, okay, like I said. All right, in Pop Matters, Lana Cooper wrote that with a penchant for songs focusing on revolutionary figures and eras in modern history, Brooklyn cabaret punk legends, the World Inferno Friendship Society, have done it again. Blending punk, cabaret, and classical music with arcane and nearly forgotten cinematic lore, the group's latest release, Addicted to Bad Ideas, Peter Lorre's 20th Century, clocks in at a little over a half an hour and spans the colorful yet tragic lifetime of the bug-eyed actor. What a diminishment of the whole project. Led by vocalist Jack Terricloth, whose tones precisely combine the clear, rich, and enchanting tones required of cabaret crooners with a slightly nasal punk whine, on this outing, World Inferno is backed by a full orchestra.
I do not think that's true.
That's a bullshit sentence, too. Not merely content to exist as a nine-piece band, the group's unique sound shines against the classically enhanced backdrop, resulting in stunning storytelling through song. Is this because there was a sort of strings or overture at the beginning?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I don't have the physical album, so I can't consult the liner
Liner
notes.
notes,
But the liner notes I found online did not mention an orchestra. I assumed that the strings were guest players.
right? Like the important thing is that clearly the album is not fully backed by an orchestra.
Right.
All right. In Impose magazine, this album practically flies past you, demanding a conscious engagement or promising to lose those whose attentions stray. The band manages to turn Laurie's morosely tinted life into a strangely optimistic tale, playing that double edged sword with a perfection that would have been lost on lesser artists. Complex both literally and musically, this is a must own for those who've enjoyed the band's previous work and for those with the attention span to take on an album length journey. It's very funny to me that these reviews do not match what we've built up in the first half of this episode.
Yeah, I found them interesting as well because there is a sort of just like blandness to the writing about it. And I think part of that is that these are people writing about this band that are not fans, maybe, right? So they're not like,
Yeah,
they haven't drank in the Kool-Aid.
right. And the record does not contain what the band was. When I look at the documentary and listen to you talk, that's
Yeah.
not what the record sounds like. It's a fun record. It's interesting to listen to, and I did dance a little bit in my office while I was listening to it.
I was going to actually ask you that. Like, I was going to wait until we got to the end of it, but like, normally when I play you stuff that is, important music to me, you're like, ugh. And
Now,
this,
come
I
on,
was,
half the time I'm like
I,
that.
I recently re-listened to our Neurosis episode, and it's pretty funny. Um, but the, I wondered, like, oh, I wonder how he's going to respond to this. And so when you texted me and you said, this is delightful, I was like, oh, wow, did not expect that at all.
Yeah,
So, yeah, like, what was your experience with this outside of the cult of it, but also, like, what does it sound like to you?
I mean, it sounds like Cabaret, and I don't mean and Cabaret small C.
Yeah.
And there's a couple different bands that I really like that have that kind of we're up on stage singing, not we're a band playing at you kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Um, there's a band called Celebration that was pretty big. Not big, it was never big, but there's a band called Celebration that was part of the TV on the radio sort of Brooklyn scene
Okay.
that had, horns and a kind, you can picture the person dancing
Hmm.
who is singing, like, oh, clearly they're holding the microphone stand and leaning some, kind of thing. um I just enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed the record because the build up to it made me think I was going to get a hardcore record. You didn't lie to me, and I didn't ask questions and get bad answers, but um the end of this Impose magazine review says the record captures the trademark frenetic cabaret brand of punk rock. And to me, that's what I heard. And I didn't dismiss it as, oh, this is just more of that genre, but it was more like, oh, I don't often get to listen to this kind of thing. This is
Hmm.
great. Um, there's a review in Punk News that says vaudevillian cabaret sound, anarchic rhetoric, archaic pop culture references. Uh, It has created an infectious swing punk sound, which has seen countless punk kids waltz dancing in front of the stage during live shows. I got the vaguest sense of that thing. Like, oh, this
Yeah.
is nice. It is it's show tunes by a punk band, or it's punk rockers um doing their version of musical theater, that kind of feel.
Right. Hmm.
But since I'm not living this life, and I never went to a show or anything, I did not get the full on feeling of, oh, smash the system,
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's recorded traditionally.
Yeah, and a lot of the Smash the System stuff is the banter in between songs. Unless,
Just the presence of the band itself.
yeah,
Yeah.
unless you're really reading the lyrics closely and you're sort of reading between the lines. Like there is, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but there is like a clear political message as well.
But this is an important bit too. It did not come across in the fullness of what the band was. It was not for Infernites in a way.
Yeah.
Um, at the end of the Punk News review, they declare the album is a great success. The decision to make a concept album about the life of Peter Lorre forced the band to put a slightly more serious tone on their music and go in a more ambitious, mature direction than the break everything appeal of Just the Best Party, which I guess is the record before.
I think it was two albums
Okay.
before. Yeah.
And then you found this perfect thing to put next to it.
Yeah.
In
So
2018, Vice asked Jack Terricloth to rank the records, and he gave Addicted to Bad Ideas fourth place and said that was definitely when we were most popular. And it was a little bit of like, oh, this record was not as satisfying to him as the other records.
mhm.
It probably was the most recordy record, you
I
know?
think that's probably true. Yeah. He also goes on to talk about how they toured on this album for 4 years. He said something like people would come up to me and say, "Did you guys break up?" And I'd say, "No, I just played in fucking Spain yesterday." But he was talking about the theatrical component, and he was like, it was a ton of work. It once we got involved with the theater stuff, it just became a lot of work, but it was also fun. But he says he thought it hurt their musical career because they didn't put another record out for 4 years.
Yeah. And he said that they got some pushback from people who were part of their scene. Um, he said, in the European run of Addicted on the weekends, we do the productions of the theater bit. It's funny how minimizing that is for like a multimedia show. And
Yeah.
during the week, we would do regular van tours, keep the money coming in because it's expensive. So that was exhausting. We did get some shit for re recording some of the songs because we'd been working on the Lorre thing for a while. Some had appeared on Just the Best Party, I think. Our mutual friend, Laura Jane Grace, was like, why did you re record those songs? Well, because it's part of the storyline.
Yeah, I never understood why people got so upset about that. And I don't really understand it when most bands do something like that. Like the okay, I will say like there are cases where a band has one hit song and they seem to put it out on like four different albums. I get that. Like
Yeah.
that's annoying.
Oh, wait. No, no, stop on that. I think this is the when something starts to seem like Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl,
Yeah.
which he did not record 5 or 6 times,
It's
but
just
was
the
on
same
a bunch of
recording.
records
Yeah.
because it was a song that could get people to get a record. And so,
Right.
you know, Van Morrison was not, he was not saying, oh, yeah, and put Brown Eyed Girl on that because it'll sell records. Someone else was doing that.
But this has also been a thing with World Inferno. It's not just this album. Like, I think there's like three different versions of Me versus the Angry Mob, which is like one of their big songs across their catalog.
Are
You
they
know,
notably
like
different? Are they interestingly different?
yeah, there's like they're not like musically arranged different, but the recordings are different. There's different intros, things like that. Yeah, you can notice the differences. Oh gosh, what's the name of the song? The German titled song on this album. Ich einrin mich an die Weimar Republik. That song. There's two versions. That's one of the ones that's re-recorded for this album. And the original version has like a whole like secondary set of vocals over the chorus that
Yeah.
aren't on this version. Yeah.
You know, I feel like you, it, whatever you feel like your side is in this argument, you can make an excellent argument for or against. You know, if you say when you record one of your songs, then you've made the recording of it. It's
Yeah.
it's not artistically useful to try something else, to go back and throw some more paint on the canvas.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to provide when you make your fans pay for something, you need to make sure that it's more
Right.
stuff, not retreads. Um, Greatest hits records that have two new songs on them are offensive. You know,
Unless you've never heard any of those songs
I
before,
hear
right?
you, right, and that's
Yeah.
the thing. Like it's the making a distinction between true fans and consumers. And when you do stuff that
Yeah.
seems to lean towards being good for consumers and not true fans, then you're selling out, and that's a problem.
And this is a band that engenders that kind of
Yeah,
response, right? Obviously, they're not just true fans. Like there are cultists for this band. I also want to apologize. I know that I butchered the German on that just then. Is it Irenair? I have no idea how to
please don't
pronounce.
ask me to correct any German. I'll sound like even more of an asshole.
Okay. Um, This next part's going to be easy because we get to skip over two entire sections. Representation, not a single person talked about representation or diversity in any of the research. I will note, I was surprised I didn't find a single academic article about this band. They feel ripe for some kind of academic
Well,
interrogation.
let's be clear-eyed on this. You are the kind of person who operates in academia and likes this band. Will you ever write an article about it? And I don't mean it's your responsibility. I'm saying, does that match your sense of what you want to do with the band?
Let me put it this way. I don't write academic articles anymore, but if I were still writing them, I might. Yeah.
You think you might? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I expected your answer to be like, no, I wouldn't use Jack that
No, I
way.
might.
Okay.
I mean, one of the papers that I got the most attention for when I was in grad school was a paper I wrote about anti-flag. Like I was asked to present that at conferences, which
How
is
funny.
weird.
Well, you know
Yeah.
what? Possibly, Chris, we've discovered that you are a unicorn.
I hope not. But not only that, but like there wasn't a lot of reflection.
Yeah.
That's why I was really struck by the Franz Nicolai piece because it provided something that I was searching for that I did not find
Yeah. Well,
anywhere
he and
else.
he was a practitioner.
Exactly. But so let's say this. We can do our own representation analysis here. I think it's notable that there were several women in this band, and there were several women at the same time. Like I think at one point there were three women in this
There
band at the
seemed to
same
be
time.
gender equity
Yeah.
in the performances. The leader was Jack Terricloth, and it was just one guy, so you can't have gender equity in that way. But it certainly seemed like um, the bass player acted as a co-conductor.
I think that's true, and I think when Summer Urchin was in the band, she did as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's the percussionist.
From the documentary and from just the way people's affect was, it was a utterly white bread whilst not being white bread. Like it,
Yeah.
I get the feeling that there was a lot of not overly privileged, but still privileged, bored white suburban kids
Hmm.
who entered into the Infernite scene.
And you're talking about the audience,
I'm
I
talking about
think,
the
right?
audience, but
Yeah.
also um, comparing, like someone being able to say, the band made me homeless, but it's okay. I had to do that.
Yeah.
You kind of assume that there's a little bit of a safety net farther back.
Hmm.
Like, can
Hmm.
you imagine a person who actually knows what it's like to be poverty stricken saying, it was going to make me homeless, but I had to do this artistic project?
Let's also remember, like, they're in Brooklyn in the late 90s, early aughts. Like, that's not a cheap place to live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, um,
if you're if you can make it there, clearly you have some mode of support that is not just cash.
I think probably we may be talking out of our asses here. It's funny, like as I was doing the research, I'll admit something. Like as a viewer of this band, I definitely had a crush on Summer Urchin, and I was like, I'm as I was going through the research, I started Googling the different band member names to see like where are they now, and she's like, the director of development at a nonprofit, and these are people who have now like gone on and have like real day jobs.
Yeah.
And some of them are musicians still and are performing, but like um and this is important I think to the context of the project and what we're going to talk about toward the end is like they grew up and like became more traditional and got day jobs and probably have families, right? Um
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah,
Here's a quick chunk of the bio of Franz Nicolai, who declared, "This made me homeless."
yeah,
He studied music at New York University, studied writing at Columbia University, where he was awarded a Felipe D. Alba Fellowship. He received fellowship residencies in composition at the Rensing Art Center and writing at the U Cross Foundation. He taught at Columbia University and UC Berkeley and is currently a faculty member in music and written arts at Bard College.
right.
His homelessness that he described, and I'm not going to say in any way like, oh, you weren't really homeless, but his homelessness that he described, I believe, is the true sense of unhoused or
Yeah, he's probably
Uh,
sleeping on friends' couches
yeah,
or in the back of a car.
or
Yeah.
simply non-ownership.
Yeah, sure, sure. The other thing I'll say about representation, we've talked about gender and ethnicity. There does not seem to be any reference to orientation, age, or religion really here, except for in the German titled song that I'm not going to try to pronounce again, which is written from the perspective of Peter Lorre. The bridge has the classic beginning line of "I'm a fag, I'm a Jew, how do you do?"
Mm,
So, he's clearly writing about Lorre from the perspective of orientation there, but I don't know necessarily that there is a like self narrative
yeah.
about orientation in this band.
And using that particular slur for queer, and feeling comfortable doing it because you're an ally is a very particular moment in time.
I think that's true, and yeah, I did want to add, like, I mean, we maybe trigger warning isn't necessary, but yeah, a caveat as to me
Let's just acknowledge
quoting
that.
that lyric,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but that they first wrote that song in like I think like 99 or 2000. Like that's the first time I remember hearing
Still
it. So
part of the
like
time that I'm talking about.
that's what I mean. Yeah, very different time, right?
Okay. Oh, and that slides us right into regulation. I'm going to quote you here. No regulation. By
Yep.
all accounts, they did what they wanted and no one could stop them unless they had to pay a bill before they performed.
I mean, somebody was paying Don Fury to record this record, right? And there must have been some money.
There's enough talk about that stuff costs.
Yeah.
He wasn't a con man and a thief,
Yeah.
running out on hotel bills and all that. I mean, he declared straight up, I owe money to the producer. I'm not going to pay it. Who knows how true that is, but
Mm.
um, yeah, they were struggling artists, but they were artists who were struggling. So they were able to do some stuff.
I keep thinking about regulation when we do these episodes lately because it's part of the circuit of culture model. But almost every episode we get to it and there's either nothing written about it or it's deep digging to try to find anything relevant to that section. And I don't know if I have like a grand thesis for this yet, but like I wonder if there is some kind of proportionality to the lack of regulation and the size of audience or the success of a project
Oh, for sure.
versus like something that is heavily regulated often seems to get more distribution and more popularity.
I think it's also important to think about the demographic of the audience.
Mhm.
If World Inferno Friendship Society were marketed as a grade school
Right.
DVD,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
would have a regulation section because there would be someone who said that can't be in the school library.
Yeah. Um, let's segue into the end, the identity and theme section, which I think is going to be heavy lifting. I wanted to start here. I did this on that Fugazi episode we did too, but I went through and reread all the lyrics
Yeah.
because I really wanted to think about like what is this album actually about? Because I didn't get the sense from any of the reviews that beyond like, oh, Peter Lorre, he was an outcast, that there was much more depth to the analysis than that. Here was my takeaway from the lyrics. I think that the overall theme of this album is a mixture of both nihilism and a hope for the world to become a better place. There seems to be a fascination from Jack's perspective and an appreciation for what's good in the world despite all the bad. And I want to specifically reference that there's a song on here called "And Embarked on a Life of Poverty and Freedom," which
Mm,
is ironic
there you
considering what we
go.
were just talking about. It has almost the exact same theme that we keep finding show up in a lot of the material we cover. It's shown up in Alan Moore, it's shown up in True Detective. This theme of looking for light in a world that seems to be full of darkness.
Now, it's so interesting that you reference Alan Moore here because the final thing that happened that like made this episode make sense to me was I was listening to another podcast. It was about V for Vendetta,
Hmm.
and they were talking about um, essentially talking about cabaret aesthetics against fascism. And Alan Moore writing about what theater performance and storytelling could do against
Hmm.
fascism, and being very clear-eyed and unidealistic about it too.
Yeah.
Like there's only so much it can do. And then the burlesque and the cabaret are an essential part of a few of the characters' stories in there.
Hmm. Hmm.
But one of the hosts, I shouldn't not credit them. It's shelved by genre, and the host Cameron was describing how important the last line of integrity and identity is for human dignity.
Hmm.
And it was a thing that often ends up in stories about how reduced to nothing, one can still declare allegiance to values, freedom, refusal to submit. There's everything from Mel Gibson screaming freedom at the end of Braveheart to Evie not giving up in the midst of the torture in V for Vendetta, and everything in between. There is an importance that only comes to light in times of precarity, scarcity, and threat.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
someone says, well, you just haven't been tested, it's not a cliche. It's
Yeah.
a truth. That's one of the things that happens when you're comfortable, you can hold a lot of ideals, and then you discover what ideals you hold when you get deeply uncomfortable or
Uh-huh.
threatened.
I think this is a theme that you and I both gravitate toward in a lot of the newer Nick Cave stuff too. Um, this is something that for the last couple of years, which have been personally and politically really tough for me, like I just keep trying to remind myself, like, no, I'm not a nihilist. Like I'm looking for hope. I'm looking for joy. I'm looking for these small things. But this is one of the lyrics from that song, which is almost exactly the same line from True Detective that subsequently was thought to have been stolen from Alan Moore in Top 10. The quote is, I was looking at all the lights in these houses. Each light cuts a tiny circle from the darkness. Each circle is the center of somebody's life. People swing around these lights like planets spin around the stars. So there's that, like, what is it in True Detective? Something like I look up at the sky and I see the stars, and they're pinpricks of light that are pushing through the darkness. That kind of,
Yeah, it used to be all dark.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of anti-authoritarian rhetoric, obviously, on this record. With a band named World Inferno Friendship Society, I think there's a sort of cheeky celebration of the end of things.
Mm-hmm.
Thumb Cinema, I think, is an interesting song because I can't quite see how that song is about Peter Lorre. But it is about the self destruction of our society through things like the auto industry and celebrity culture and digital sound bites. Um,
Well, this is evidence toward the intensely personal nature of Jack Terricloth's obsessions,
yeah,
which were not that did not overwhelm the entire experience.
right.
Undoubtedly, there was some piece of car culture and Peter Lorre and his life
Yeah.
that clicked for him. We would probably have to read the biography. And if we read the biography, we might find the line suddenly where, you know, Lorre held a deep seated mistrust of the American auto industry. You
It,
know,
it might be in there. You're right. Yeah, he's probably pulling from very obscure lines in the biography. Yeah.
yeah. But also, there's that thing he says in the documentary. This is a song about how every time you buy a new car, you're killing the world or something. And
Yeah.
it has inherent in it the kind of um, reduce the requirements of production by reducing your requirements of consumption.
Hmm. Which leads perfectly into the last bit I want to talk about before we get into other people's interpretations of this. So again, butchering the German here. Ich Eirenaer mich ein die Weimar Republik, which I think is I remember the Weimar
Okay,
in
yeah.
English. That's always been one of my favorite songs by them. But reading through the lyrics, which he alternates between each verse is about the story of Pirate Jenny, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's
Only because
three
of
penny
Alan
opera
Moore.
because of Alan Moore, because the Black Freighter. Yeah, he also references it in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Actually,
Yeah,
now that I
one of the
think of it,
later books.
yeah. So he alternates between that and the story of Sally Bowles, who I believe is the main character in Cabaret, the
That's right.
Liza
That's
Minnelli
Liza
character.
Minnelli in the movie.
Yeah. Um, to outline what life was like in the Weimar as the Nazis started to take over and what led to Peter Lorre fleeing Germany. Um, and as I was reading the lyrics, I was like, oh my God, the themes of this are so relevant today. That's what society feels like right now.
Yeah, there's not
In
a
America,
week.
I mean.
I know there's not a week that goes by without some kind of reference to should we stay or should we go, and
Yeah.
can we? Can
Yeah.
we do either one?
Yeah. Yeah. I found myself a couple of weeks ago really thinking about leaving the country and like
Yeah.
starting to look pretty seriously into like what would it take. And I don't think I'm in a position to do it if I wanted to. But
So that right there, you don't have any real reason to stay, unlike someone who has to be at the next World Inferno Friendship Society show.
unpack what you're saying a little bit more.
I'm making a joke,
Oh, okay.
but the communities that you are connected to
Yeah.
are not nearly as all encompassing and cross identity and detached from
Yeah.
blood and soil, and are instead about ecstatic artistic enjoyment. That's what people can live for, right?
Yeah.
And might make
Yeah.
sure they stick around for.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think I need to find more points of light like that, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
This is, I mean, I'm sort of bending us on purpose back to it.
yeah.
The Boston Phoenix in 2011 ran an article called "The World Inferno Friendship Society Lead a Punk Cult," and they reference the documentary. They say that it would have been easy to cut it to make it look like, World Inferno Friendship Society was literally a religious cult. Here are some things they describe. One acolyte was told that seeing World Inferno would change his life. After a few shows, the prophecy came true. A second fan discusses canceling family activities because of the band and not regretting it because these people are my friends and my family. A couple who bonded via the group claim the first Inferno spawned baby, meaning we met at a show, we love each other, we had a kid. A veteran of punk shows speaks of being won over by frontman Jack Terricloth's magnetic personality and the gestalt that is Inferno. And then the Phoenix says, it's not a bad thing that World Inferno are the source of this fanaticism. Following a band is typically a far more casual activity than joining a cult. No one gets harmed, but it's worth investigating what makes the group worthy of worship in the first place. So consider how Terricloth responds to a question about what message they stand for. I know I sound like the Obama campaign, but hope you can make your own way in the world.
So we're coming back to the light and the darkness theme there, right? Like that it's easy to say like, oh, this is an album about Peter Lorre, but I think that's the theme of this album. That there is hope to be found.
Yeah, and but that hope is coming from a place of, despite all of the trauma, Peter Lorre is still remembered.
Yeah.
I hope you think of me as a person who gave you some ideas and was brave. That's not hope for, an easier time or hope for love.
No.
That's hope for survival despite.
Yeah.
That's hope for being able to sustain. Um, and and there is something a little bit like, oh gosh, it's not sugar to make the medicine go down, but it's like, making hope part of the spectacle of a band, making it a extraordinary community act, kind of like uh, taking a Lutheran service and then throwing the speaking in tongues and snake handling into it to
Yeah.
make it more powerful, to make
Oh
it
yeah.
feel
Yeah.
more like, not, oh, this is how society works. And you
Mm-hmm.
must hope, because at the end of your life, there's the heavenly promise, and then other things will happen. But more like, everything's going to be okay. It's terrible, but everything's going to be okay. Come on. That's
Yeah.
a very different message than, we can do it together hope. That's a you can be. I'm now going down a circuitous path here. So pull me out of it. But I think you
I
hear what I'm
think
saying.
I do. I think what you're saying is, I think you're getting hung up on the Obama-ness of it. That he's not talking about hope in the sense of like that we'll achieve this enlightened society. We're going to live in a utopia and we're going to fix all the problems. I think it's hope of like, uh, you're not alone.
Yeah, I'm
There,
sticking with my
there,
church metaphor. I think
there
that
are
was the better
things that are
analogy.
worth
Yeah,
being positive about. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, and the Boston Phoenix even calls out a little bit of the audience is dressing to match the band,
Yeah.
and that's a little bit of, oh, we're starting to fail in the punk side of things a little bit if everyone's starting to all do the same.
Oh yeah, but I mean, whether they're wearing suits or I don't know, like what was the punk fashion of the time? Leather jackets with spikes, right? Like,
Right.
it's all conformity. That was not entirely uncommon and still isn't, you know. Something, okay, this is a super divergence, but something that I've noticed at shows when I've been going lately, the younger people, Charlie, seem to line up at the merch table before the show and all buy t-shirts
Mm.
before the show starts and then put them on. So they're all wearing the band shirt that they just bought at the show during the performance. And that, from my Gen X sensibility, seems gauche.
This is the most Terricloth you've been the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, it is. There are some things that I'm a snooty asshole about, and this is one of them.
Okay, well, is there anything else you want to hit here before we get into the hard shit?
There is one particularly silly statement in one of these reviews that I thought was worth stating out loud, and
Okay,
maybe it
I
makes more sense to you than it does me.
I'm deeply worried about this.
This is from Paul Bozzo and Treble Zine, and he says, World Inferno Friendship Society could easily be mistaken with an orgasm. The music spends itself in a remarkably short time span for all of the instrumentation and vocals crammed into each song. First of all, Paul, I don't know what kind of orgasms you're having, but um, I I joke because I think like obviously music writers reach for metaphors. That's a bit of a reach, but
A
also
bit of a reach around, to be
oh,
honest.
very nicely done.
Thanks, dude.
But I think uh, there's something to this, which is like I think what he's trying to get to is the charisma, right? Like the almost like hypnotic effect that the band has upon you that like
Yeah,
lures you in. Um, and that's the high, like right, that's the high of this band that generates these fervent followers that has led this community for many years. I
yeah,
think now where we're headed is there is a low to this as well.
yeah. I do have to say, I need to call bullshit on every single piece of this. Um,
The orgasm piece.
every single piece, because not only is that kind of a mixture of the gender stereotype of the male and female orgasm,
Yeah.
and to no good end either. All of that work for such a short thing. It's like, actually, we've discussed this before. That's not how it works for anybody. And also, World Inferno Friendship Society was around for 20 years.
Longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fuck that. It's not a remarkably short time span for all the instrumentation and vocals crammed into each song. And then
I
the
think he
actual,
means each song is
yeah, but
short.
he's full
Yeah.
of shit, Chris.
Sure.
That's
Okay.
bullshit. You don't talk like that about, it's not how it works.
Sex or music or
There,
both.
all of it. There's shows. You do the whole thing. There's
Yeah.
pauses. You like, oh my god, I can't believe he did all that instrumentation for a 3 minute song. It really feels like an orgasm. Fucking what?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think it's a reach. You know how I feel about music reviews. Um, it is a lost art, the art of a good
I don't.
music
I don't know if
criticism
anybody
piece.
ever had it. To be honest, Paul, I'm sorry that this was the moment when I lost my shit.
You've been holding it in for so long.
But that's poor fucking writing. Okay.
Now,
Oh yeah, no.
I teed you up perfectly for the sad part.
Yes. All right. Let me put on my game face for this.
So, like I said, though, orgasm or not, whether or not you agree with Paul's metaphor, that's sort of the hmm, pinnacle of the band, right? Of making people feel good. I believe one of their albums is called "The Anarchy and the Ecstasy," right? Um, but there is a downturn. Like this is the the VH1 music documentary of we've hit the height and now we're getting into the denouement. Like things are dropping.
Yeah. And a lot of that is kind of uh, teasing out why was it that Peter Lorre was so compelling to Jack Terricloth. Jack Terricloth was incredibly compelling to all these folks, but it would seem that he kind of found in this record that not everybody felt was like the most World Inferno Friendship Society record. He very clearly
Yeah.
stated, "This is what's bothering me."
Yeah, and it seemed like the Laurie stuff wasn't just like, oh, he's an outcast. Like for instance, here's a quote from the Pop Matters review by Lana Cooper. While not explicitly stated in the songs, some of the unfortunate points of Peter Lorre's life are covered in blanket format in the title of the work, Addicted to Bad Ideas. Morphine addiction, founding and losing his own production company due to mismanaged funds, dwindling screen opportunities. The latter years of Peter Lorre's life were something of a downward spiral. She also talks about, and this is sort of the larger overall 10,000 foot view theme of the album. In the 30s and 40s, cinema goers were more grounded in reality. Coming off of the Great Depression in the United States, Europeans suffered a similar fate. In addition to being in the thick of two devastating world wars, there was less of a fascination with celebrities, much less with ones with no real function other than posing prettily for the camera. Those who had real stories to tell, which I'm assuming we're talking about Peter Lorre here, not merely surviving, but succeeding in trying times, rarely had an opportunity to share their tales with a widespread audience. Personal tragedy was private, not tabloid trotted badges of honor.
And so, if we want to make a connection between Terrycloth and Lori in this way, uh, if Lori has a real life with tragedies and trauma, and he made that into his art, his performances that are kind of indelible.
Yeah.
Um, Terry Cloth made his troubles and traumas into also an indelible art that was all about connection. It
Yeah.
was all
Yeah.
about creating a community. Laurie couldn't do that because celebrity culture in the 40s was not geared toward that.
Right.
Post depression was not geared toward that. Um, Terry Cloth was able to do that because of the punk rock scene that he was in,
Mm-hmm.
but he also did not do it in the celebrity style. Like, did you ever see Jack on a talk show? Did he ever make it onto a podcast?
I don't. I've never heard him on a podcast. There are a few YouTube interviews with him. Um, I don't talk show, definitely not.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Chris Fleming right now is
Oh God, he's blowing up.
he's all
Yeah.
over the place, and he's
Yeah.
presented as kind of an outsider
Hmm.
comedian, and he's making fun of people on the inside, and he's androgynous and chaotic, and sort of a Maria Bamford kind of follower and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was on fucking Seth Meyers.
I watched that clip. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Now he did try to run around the stage and force the space to be used in a particular way and
Right.
disrupt the interview, but also it was still a television segment that made it on air.
Yeah, he was on national TV.
Yeah. I think
I
Terry
mean,
Cloth would have rather have been a person who you had to cut the segment because of what happened on it.
oh, maybe. Yeah. Well, I can't remember the name of it. This is another thing that is on YouTube. There's a radio station that does like live performances in their studio. And just before he passed away, before the pandemic started, World Inferno did record a set there.
Huh.
And there's like, I think 3 songs that are on YouTube from it.
Okay.
And that's like sort of the most talk showy, I guess, that I
Yeah.
can think of that I've seen from them. But I think there's a good segue here to end this. There's this fascination with Peter Lorre from this album, from this band, from this frontman, with his outcast status, but also with his connections to what was the quote, like everything worth doing in the 20th century.
Right.
But I think there's also this identification with Peter Lorre as a depressive figure on a downward spiral. And that's the part that we didn't see with Jack Terricloth when he
Yeah.
was on stage.
Although Impose magazine calls it out pretty well, pretty presciently. They said in the review about the record, in his later years, Laurie was plagued by morphine addiction and depression and died of a stroke in 1964. In essence, he made a life out of playing the eternal stranger, the foreigner. In the petty world of 1940s film, he embodied the outcast. It's no surprise that a ragtag anarchist circus spawned from an oft vilified subculture would find him to be an appealing figure.
Yeah.
Sometimes when people write stuff like that, it feels like they really forced it. I feel like Impose nailed it.
Yeah, maybe they knew something we didn't.
Yeah, especially because Terry Cloth, he died of a stroke.
He did, yeah. Which is something I think about because I'm closing in on 50, which is how old he was when he died, and I have high blood pressure. But I take medication for my high blood pressure. I'm a good middle-aged, middle-class normie,
Instead
you
of
know.
medication for your angst.
Yeah, I'm not drinking my high blood pressure away, I guess. Yeah. Which leads us to the piece that we've been hinting at for the last 2 hours. Um, Franz Nicolai, who we cited earlier, he played keyboards, piano, and accordion in World Inferno, wrote a eulogy for Jack when he died in the winter of 2022. So this is like a year and a half after his death. It's called Burning Up, and I think it's published on maybe his own site. We'll have a link to it. And there's a number of quotes I want to read here, and I think we can kind of talk through these.
Yeah,
And
go for it.
but I think it leads to what we were talking about. And for me, this is particularly revealing because it's the first time I've heard somebody from the inside um, talk about Jack as not a like uh, I, a idolized figure.
Yeah. And I'll tell you and listeners, I'm good with you using this as a moment to reflect on how you feel about someone who's important to you who died while you read
Thanks.
this eulogy. So go for it. And I will merely interrupt and not derail.
So it starts like this. Nikolai says, the impossible, irresistible person inhabiting the character of Jack Terricloth, the crooning punk rocker, the suave, belligerent bon vivant, self-proclaimed anarchist and friend of the friendless, died this past May in his apartment in Queens, just short of his 51st birthday. Or perhaps it is more accurate to say that the character had consumed the person long before the body wore out. That, I think, is the thesis statement of this eulogy. The character of Jack Terricloth consumed Pete before
And
his body wore out.
willingly so too.
I'm skipping ahead here. He says, Though the conceptual framework of World Inferno and the aesthetic were thoroughly his, I'm avoiding the term leader to describe him in deference to both his self professed anarchism and his resistance to the sort of responsibility or ambition that might characterize a traditional band leader. He might have preferred terms like instigator or inciter. So this is like, I think again, like a little bit of the insight behind the scenes. Like, I think what Nikolai is saying here is if he was a leader, he would have had the ambition to take World Inferno further than it went. But he was more into the the identity that he created.
Yeah. And we should also see that ding, his resistance to the sort of responsibility that might characterize a leader.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a crack in the facade there.
And so Nikolai does this thing next in the eulogy that I thought was interesting. He does an at his best and at his worst comparison. At his best, Jack was an electrifying performer. Lithe and stylish, he had a panoramic baritone, a sharp wit, and sloganeering eloquence, and a fearless taste for chaos. He reveled in the fire and later destruction that came to be associated with the ferocious World Inferno live shows. His best was more rarely seen as time passed, and as he disappeared into Johnny Walker Black and into the Terricloth character, the high notes disappeared, and the stage persona congealed into a collection of tics and catchphrases. But he inspired first loyalty, then respect, and a kind of grudging, awestruck melancholy, affection, as someone who shaped the formative years of those susceptible to his charm.
There's a lot going on in there.
That's
So,
one paragraph. Yeah. Do you
yeah.
want to help unpack that?
Yeah. Anyone who has been a drunk or been close to a drunk knows this deal. A person who drinks too much collapses into a kind of repetitive, deadening kind of version of themselves. A lot of times, addicts come from a place of charisma and magnetism,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you have too much of something like desire for connection or wishing to perform and be the object of attention or whatever, you may try to deaden that. You can very easily deaden all the stuff that you've been trying to self medicate for.
My takeaway from this is like Franz saw it from both sides, right? Like he was clearly from that documentary, he was held under the sway of the Jack persona, right? And it got him to join the band and make all these sacrifices to be a part of it. And he also says we should say like it's the happiest he's been in his life.
Yeah, this he said, it left me homeless, but I had to do it.
But he's also saying here, as he got older, Jack wasn't growing as a
Yeah,
person. And I think what he was seeing, Franz, not Jack, was that the rest of them were growing as people. They were moving on, they were doing other things. Maybe they still wanted to participate in World Inferno, but maybe not the same way. Um,
yeah.
and Jack was, quote, a collection of tics and catchphrases. The things that had worked, that had impressed people over the years, he was repeating over and over again.
Nikolai writes about the impression of World Inferno that people had. He said that World Inferno has been left out of the emerging canon of aughts punk, even as some of those young fans have joined the ranks of cultural media, has something to do with the sui generis nature of the band. A 9-piece muso circus playing crust punk festivals is hard to domesticate into a retrospective scene. But as with ska or theater camps or leftist activism, whoops, one senses a slight embarrassment at the memory of the costumes, the sloganeering, the uncritical and unabashed idealism. We often reflexively cringe at our teenage enthusiasms. There's also the complicated balance between euphoria and danger. I suppose the Inferno scene produced eventually a good deal of addiction and perhaps sobriety. Anarchy is as destructive as it is exhilarating. Some of those guide rails serve a purpose.
Wow, that's interesting to unpack
Yeah,
too, right? So
that's
like
that's real good actually.
what this makes me think of, and this is again something that I cite all the time, so I've probably said it on the show and I know I've said it to you. It makes me think of the Weather Underground.
Mm,
which brings me all the way back to the thing that I started off with talking about the pro-Palestinian protesters. Um, there's a underground documentary, but there's also been many interviews with the members of the Weather Underground decades later after their actions, where members of the group regret what they did, and they talk about what they did, with embarrassment and realizing that it was young idealism and that people got hurt along the way. And that's like a much bigger, but when I'm saying people got
Yeah.
hurt, people got killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
People didn't get killed with World Inferno. But I think what Franz is saying here is like the enthusiasm, the personas, the spectacle of it was very alluring. But behind the scenes, people were hurting. It sounds like they were hurting from addiction.
Yeah. He calls Terricloth a romantic with a capital R, which brings with it deep emotions, idealism, and dissatisfaction and addiction. You know,
Yeah.
uh, so he wrote that Jack Terricloth was devoted, in theory, to a radical anarchy which could manifest as an evasive passivity if you were relying on him. So that goes back to the you can't count on him for some stuff. This is clearly there were moments when they needed Jack to step up and he couldn't or didn't. Uh, would manifest as evasive passivity if you were relying on him, for example, to make plans for the future. He delighted in scolding gaucheries and enforcing a bevy of rules of decorum and behavior. I had a therapist say to me once, "Oh, I love all of these rules you have for your drinking. It's all about control and you know it."
I referenced our Neurosis episode earlier.
Yeah.
I re-listened to it last week because Neurosis came out with a new album recently that's fucking awesome. But I was like, oh, I wonder what our Neurosis episode was like. And the whole theme of the episode is me essentially saying to you, you have a lot of rules for what you like and what you don't like.
It does take one to know one, Chris.
No, it's true. I did the same thing. Yeah, yeah. And so clearly did Jack.
Yeah. Like many punk rockers, this is back to the eulogy. Like many punk rockers, Jack was a romantic. His commitment was to the currently unfashionable Dionysian legacy of punk, the temporary autonomous zone facilitating the revelation that responsibility is a mirage. Though he enjoyed living well, he seemed genuinely not to care about the little inconvenience of money. He went most of the 21st century without an obvious job, though he certainly cared about fame or attention or at least notoriety and the influence that came with it. His was an idealist, self defeating, admirable refusal to accommodate even the smallest compromises to things like entertainment lawyers and headlining bands. No one headlined over Jack, they just played later.
Yeah. So this is like again, this is stuff like I would not have thought. Like I would not have thought that he was a person who cared about fame. And yet, like clearly Franz is saying like no, that was what was important to him. He wanted the attention, you know.
Yeah.
Um
And also room for huge feelings.
oh, yeah, that's
And this
interesting.
and this is a place, this is where, look, I'm I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist. I can't even claim to really have uh, an addiction history that's worth a damn to be able to speak to it. But I've picked up a few things being diagnosed and having to talk through stuff I've done and things I wish I hadn't. You have huge feelings, and there's a couple different ways you can approach them. And one of them is to stuff them down. Another way is to regulate them, sit with them, understand them, accept them, and try and manage them. And a third way is to say, this is the most important thing, what I'm feeling right now, and it must be engaged with and understood and indulged. And I am going to prove to all of you that I'm right.
Vomiting your emotions all over everybody around you. Yeah.
Or performing your emotions at people,
Yeah.
or declaring rules of decorum that are based around what you like and what's important to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like there's, reading between the lines of this, it's clear that there is some resentment about the possibility of maybe the band making more money, or maybe there was money that was left on the table or was taken from them that could have been enough to help them survive.
Right.
I don't
Could
think
you,
anybody was looking to get rich.
yeah, but could you have handled that better, Jack? Could you have
Mm.
accepted, you know, some rule of performance so that we could have had the gig?
Yeah. Um, he tells a story in the middle of the eulogy. He says Jack had a profound rhetorical gift, which I think we've learned at this point in the episode. But the story he tells about that is not necessarily one of like the grandstanding. He says when 9/11 happened, they were in a punk club in Hanover, Germany, and they were sort of deciding whether or not they should play or not. And ultimately, they did. They played the show that night. He said they took MDMA and drank some wine and set up and played their show. Jack reached into his pocket and threw something onto the ground. He said to the audience, "Here's an American quarter. It'll be worth something someday." It was the ability to express the historical context and scope of the moment and the complicity of capital and cultural hegemony, the transience of empire, with a flippant and disdainful irony and a detached, lordly humor, all through a veil of intoxication that distinguished Jack's finest moments.
But the best and worst keep going back and forth because he continues. His undiscriminating hospitality made room for impregnable grudges. If an enemy couldn't be found, one could be invented. It gave one, he said, a reason to get out of bed. I, Franz says, wasn't the only former band member to leave confused, exhausted, or even embittered with a feeling of exile and ostracism. Jack could be irritating and deeply frustrating, alternating between provocation and affection. Few ultimately could meet his standards, which included, as with every prophet, lifelong loyalty. The cult. His was a commitment to legacy over life. Everyone has a favorite dead punk rocker, he liked to say. I hope one day to be yours. There it is. There are values we hold until it reaches the point of it destroying you.
I've seen some of this, but I also noticed, especially in that Reddit thread I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people like analyzing the lyrics of the later albums and speculating that he knew he was dying. And like you said, like it was all sort of leading to a lifestyle of self-destruction.
Mm-hmm.
That like dying young was part of the identity. And you probably don't know this song because it's not on the album, but he has a song called "The My Ancestral Homeland of New Jersey," which the song begins with the lyric, "When I die, I know they're going to bury me in Jersey." Um, and he proceeds to talk about how much he hated New Jersey, but he's also somewhat nostalgic for it.
Yeah.
But even back then, he was thinking, like, when I die, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And also, he was thinking about what's true about him he doesn't like. There's another story in the eulogy where basically Franz very poetically says, some people said, "Hey, Jack, you need to cut it out. You need to go back to being Pete instead of being Jack because you're killing yourself."
Yeah.
And the quote is, "Nobody liked Pete who was sober. People only liked me when I became Jack, and I'm not going back." And liking in this case is probably more attached to the shows and the charisma and the ecstatic offerings, not whoever is hanging out with Jack Terricloth, on a Tuesday afternoon having a cup of coffee.
Yeah. I feel like as we're reading this, we're reading bits and pieces. We're not reading you the whole
Yeah, yeah,
thing. So I think that you should go read the full thing if you want the full effect. Franz wraps up the piece, sort of presenting his thesis statement again. And he says, "I want to preserve something of the complexity of this man before the hagiography calcifies." Because at the point that he was writing this, everybody was eulogizing Jack, talking about what a great man he was, how amazing he was. Quote, I want to speak about the power of seductive friends who force you to outgrow them and who try in various ways to revenge themselves or reassert control, and also the feeling of watching someone you love and respect destroy himself. He ruined his voice and his quicksilver mind. Only habit and vanity spared the shell of his glamour. Then he wraps up by saying this: you have to remember this is a path he set himself on, what he's wanted since he was a teenager. Look at his heroes: Peter Lorre, Jeffrey Lee Pierce, elegant fuck ups who stylishly spent their talent and died. If you tried to keep him from that, not only wouldn't he thank you, you'd have thwarted his great project to burn as brightly as possible in a cult of personality, to become a magnificent, beautiful wreck, and finally to ascend into his rightful apotheosis in punk rock myth. We may prefer people to icons, but only icons are immortal.
That's beautiful, but also no one knows who Jack Terricloth is.
No, even this person who is very close to him, right? And seemingly maybe wasn't close to him for a long time. I mean, I don't know anything. I'm just a fan and I have a parasocial relationship with this band. But my understanding was the not Sandra Malik, but the current bass player of the band when he died was also his girlfriend, and they lived together. And there was a kind of uh, movement when he died around raising money to help her get by.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, you misunderstand me totally appropriately. I'm saying that as an icon, if he has immortality, it's very tenuous and it's only attached to very few people who are fans or are Infernites.
Oh, yeah.
What he's done only was, gosh, I don't want to be moralistic about this. I don't want to be like, see, it's all wrong. What I mean to say is it's it's terribly romantic in its own way to be like, I'm going to destroy myself for my legacy, and knowing that your legacy was minimal and was really only the stuff that was happening while you were there
Hmm.
for it.
Hmm.
It's a question of whether you should, um, whether there's value in accepting the impossibility of these huge gestures, of these extraordinary and self-destructive drives. They can't be successful.
Hmm.
They can only be transcendent in the moment, ecstatic in the moment. I don't know. It's there's an argument here that well, the argument is, was that worth it? And I think everybody has to come to their own conclusion about that.
Yeah. I want to try to close us out by circling back to a few things that we started with. So we talked a lot at the beginning about ritual. You talked about the Dirty Three. You talked about Lila asking you why, if we should have more rituals in our family. Um, I talked about the No Kings protests and that maybe it didn't actually accomplish anything except for ritual that brought people together. I think for me, that's what World Inferno did for me. It provided a space, both on the albums and a live show, that was a ritual space where I felt like I was together with other people. I felt like I was maybe understood or seen. But if I'm honest, despite the influence that his lyrics had on me, made me think more politically, made me go out and learn things about history that I maybe didn't know. I don't know necessarily that World of Inferno as a band was like a productive force for change, right? And I also don't think that that was the goal, right? Like, I think what we took away from this album, like analyzing its themes, was um, a celebration of like small points of light and hope. Um, but like reading this Franz Nicolai piece, it like not only made me think of, okay, so despite his like political rhetoric, Jack really wasn't affecting change, but he also didn't grow beyond that like sort of um, grandstanding heckler. Um, and when I think back on what I talked about, like about how um, occasionally I feel guilty that I'm not more of a radical leftist. And I think like, oh, Jack would be disappointed in me. And now after doing this episode and reading through all this research, I think, is that such a bad thing? Did his life accomplish something? It did, in the sense that like he inspired many people, and those people have gone on to do things with that. I think, as Nikolai says, like those of us are like becoming sort of like figures of influence in cultural spheres or something to that effect, right? So I think about that guilt, and I think after reading through all of this, I think to myself, well, I think maybe the difference is like I may not have like stood up on a stage and inspired people, and I may not be like a figure of charismatic influence, but I'm still alive and I'm surviving. Like I didn't self-destruct, and I've like survived some pretty hard stuff. Um, and I'm trying to make change where I can in my day-to-day life. I don't know necessarily then like when I look back on Jack that I need the judgment of his ghost over over my political choices.
That's good because his ghost is just you talking to yourself.
Totally. You've been listening to Super Context, a podcast autopsy of media.
How it's made and how it informs our everyday culture.
Our theme music is Human Factor by Mile Marker.
And you're listening to Drive Fast by 3 Chain Links.
All show notes are available at patreon.com/supercontext.
And you can email the show at supercontextpodcast@gmail.com.
I'm available on Blue Sky as @ChristianSager.
And I am not available. I have a scorched earth policy on social media. 2 N's, 2 T's.